Under the pale glow of a distant neutron star, the Galactic Council chamber sat in quiet dissonance. Towering above the stars, its crystalline dome shimmered in refracted light, casting colors across hundreds of delegates seated in concentric rings. Every species from the known sectors had a presence here, scaled, feathered, gelatinous, metallic. Voices whispered in dozens of dialects, some telepathic, some translated through biosynthetic intermediaries. But one seat remained starkly empty. It was the seat of Earth. Humanity's emblem hovered in a dormant projection, muted blue, unilluminated. For 2 hours the Council had deliberated on peripheral issues: trade disputes near the Selxian borders, political boundaries in the Varnash Drift, minor escalations along the Rim colonies. But beneath every debate lay the tension of a greater silence. The attack on Earth, classified as a cross-border misfire by the Sovereign Coalition, had rattled protocol. Delegates glanced toward the human sector, some with curiosity, others with poorly veiled discomfort. The Sovereign ambassador, layered in hard obsidian-like chitin, maintained stillness but radiated quiet arrogance. Near him, the Escari fluttered their wingpads nervously. None could deny what had happened, but all hoped to downplay its significance. The council chair, an ethereal being of latticework light, pulsed faintly. "We await the Terran delegate. Delay has exceeded customary allowance. Do we motion to proceed without them?" Silence met the suggestion, but it wasn't agreement, it was caution. Humans had only joined the Council 2 galactic cycles ago. They were young, impulsive, and had risen faster than most species expected. In mere decades they'd become economically stable, militarily competent, and technologically unpredictable. Still, to many, Earth was a periphery race, bold, but lacking galactic nuance. That illusion died the moment news arrived that Earth had been hit. Council members had reviewed sanitized reports. Orbital facilities decimated. Civilian cities leveled. Communications severed. The Sovereigns insisted it was a rogue faction within their fleet, operating independently. They issued a standard apology, a half-hearted promise of internal investigation. No reparations. No real accountability. Just another political maneuver. But humanity had remained silent. No immediate retaliation. No official broadcast. Just silence. An uncomfortable, echoing silence that grew heavier with each passing day. The Furlan representative, a crystalline life form who rarely spoke, finally chimed in with a click language translated by pulsed light. "The humans do not grieve loudly. That is known. They absorb. Then act." The chair pulsed. "Yet no response implies strategic contemplation. A pause before the verdict. Or the storm before retaliation," muttered the Relk ambassador, audible despite intending otherwise. Another pause. The Caxori, a war-hardened species known for their brutality, shifted uneasily. Even they respected the unpredictable fury humans had displayed in the border skirmishes 2 cycles ago. That incident, minor compared to this, had ended with a Caxori fleet losing contact within 12 minutes of crossing Earth's perimeter. Still, many believed humans would come to plead, or demand justice through diplomatic routes. That was the process. That was the Council way. And most assumed Earth, despite its pain, would conform. But the empty seat said otherwise. It wasn't the kind of absence that spoke of weakness. It was the kind that made people look over their shoulders. Low murmurs continued, some arguing for sanctions, others suggesting Earth might withdraw from the Council altogether. The concept of a species turning its back on galactic order was unthinkable. Dangerous. Suddenly, the chamber lights dimmed, not by accident, but by protocol. It was the first indication that a high-level diplomatic envoy had arrived. The murmurs stopped instantly. Every eye turned to the far corridor, the one reserved for state-level representatives. The passage had been inactive all day. Now, its iris lock opened with a hum that echoed too cleanly through the chamber. The air changed. Not in temperature but in tone. No footsteps yet. Just pressure. Tension. Presence. The Sovereigns turned their headplates subtly, their red irises narrowing. The escaries stilled their wings entirely. Even the council chair's light dimmed to a lower frequency, as if awaiting what approached. It was not the fear of an enemy. It was the silence before something alien even to them, human grief mixed with calculation. Not lashing out. Not desperation. Something else. Every species in the chamber had seen war. They understood vengeance. But what made them uncomfortable now was the realization dawning in shared glances. They had no precedent for what came next. The human seat remained empty, but not forgotten. Because for the first time in recent memory, the Galactic Council wasn't leading a conversation. They were waiting to be addressed. It began without warning. No declarations, no intercepted signals, no build-up along known borders. One moment, Earth was basking in the quiet rhythm of a standard rotation. The next, its atmosphere lit up with descending fire. At precisely 2:17 Universal Time Coordinated, a coordinated orbital strike targeted 7 major cities simultaneously. Beijing, Johannesburg, Sao Paulo, Berlin, Cairo, Sydney, and Vancouver, each reduced to chaos in less than 60 seconds. Satellites blinked offline. Civilian communications severed. Infrastructure melted under sustained plasma bombardment. It wasn't random. It was surgical. Initial responses from Earth's defense network were delayed by milliseconds, an eternity in strategic terms. Orbital defense grids attempted to lock on to the invaders, but the enemy ships were cloaked in foreign stealth tech, bearing no recognizable transponders. The attack didn't match any known pirate methods. It was too clean. Too exact. In the hours that followed, humanity reeled. Emergency broadcasts were choked by static. Images of burning skylines and streets drowned in ash surged through unstable media networks. Hospitals overrun. Entire city blocks disappeared. Civilian footage showed streaks of white flame splitting the skies, and children screaming in bunkers that collapsed seconds later. Command centers activated contingency protocols. Retaliatory fleets were ordered into high alert. Subterranean bunkers beneath Geneva and Seattle lit up with activity. Yet amid the panic, the official stance remained restrained. No targets. No confirmation of the enemy. The global leadership, for the first time in over a century, issued a unified broadcast. We do not strike blind. But we will not forget. The attackers vanished just as quickly as they appeared. No occupation. No follow-up demands. Just impact. Vanish. Confusion. Then came the debris. One of the smaller crafts, clipped by a kinetic railgun before escaping orbit, crashed into the Bering Sea. It was retrieved within hours. Inside, not pirates, not mercenaries. The tech bore signatures linked directly to the Savrex coalition. Coding alloys used only in their military-grade vessels. Bioresidue samples, genetically consistent with Savrex operators. Serial tags intentionally scratched off, but partial identifiers remained. Enough for Earth's analysts to know. Officially, the Savrex denied involvement. Claimed their vessels had been hijacked. The rogue theory. A narrative carefully seeded across channels. But humans, by nature or by evolution, learn to hear lies and silence more clearly than in speech. While world governments coordinated aid and reconstruction, intelligence agencies pooled everything. Cross-linked signatures, movement logs, warped trail residue. The trail, though faint, pointed not to a rogue unit, but a deliberate black operation authorized at high command. Internal Savrex directives leaked days later through an anonymous data drop, revealing terms like preemptive destabilization and cultural containment. Humanity understood then. It wasn't a misfire. It was fear. Fear of human expansion, of unregulated progress, of a species too fast and too unpredictable. Earth wasn't attacked because it posed an immediate threat. It was attacked because it refused to slow down. There were no parades. No speeches filled with outrage. Just mourning wrapped in calculation. In war rooms buried beneath layers of bedrock, plans unfolded. Fleets repositioned in silence. Old enemies from Earth's own history shook hands and signed military pacts. AI systems, once experimental, were pushed into mass production. Orbital stations began construction on silent defense platforms that no treaty had sanctioned. Satellites with no public designation replaced the ones that burned. Civilians weren't told everything. They didn't need to be. What they saw was enough. What they felt, loss, fire, broken stone, was enough. And under all of it, they began to change. Not into something monstrous, but something patient. Focused. The Sovereigns expected retaliation. A rash, emotional strike. That was the mistake. Instead, Earth sent no demands. No ultimatums. The silence continued, but it was no longer uncertain. It was purposeful. Like an archer drawing breath before letting the string go. Council communications attempted to reach Earth repeatedly. Offers of mediation. Coded regret. Formal condolences issued from species that hadn't lifted a finger during the assault. But the messages were met with static, or polite acknowledgments with no commitment to dialogue. Earth wasn't ignoring the galaxy. It was observing it. Every planetary leader received the same encrypted memo. We do not scream in pain. We build in it. Prepare. And so they did. When the official call finally came from the Galactic Council to explain the event, Earth answered it. Not with fleets. Not with weapons. With a diplomat. Alone. But by then, preparations were far beyond visible thresholds. Scars were mapped. Data compiled. Faces remembered. Coordinates marked. And Earth had learned something. It would never be caught unprepared again. The chamber's quiet broke not with sound, but with a shift in atmosphere, a density that pressed against the senses. Every representative felt it. Not fear. Not reverence. Anticipation sharpened into tension. All eyes turned as the central entrance dilated open. He walked in with unhurried steps. Not armored. Not cloaked in ceremony. Clad in a matte black diplomatic uniform devoid of rank insignia or cultural flair. No entourage followed. No translator flanked him. He needed none. His presence alone rewrote the mood. Species that prided themselves on detachment found their focus narrowing. The Sovereigns, who had remained proud even during crisis, adjusted in their seats. Their confidence fractured. This was not the expression of a broken race come to weep. This was resolve given form. He stopped at the center, gazing forward without a word. No pleasantries. No bows. The emblem of Earth, dormant moments ago, flickered to life behind him, a soft blue that pulsed once, then steadied. The council chair initiated formal recognition. Delegate of Terra, the floor is yours. He didn't thank them. He placed a thin projection disc on the speaking pedestal. Light flickered upward, displaying a split screen, on one side, Earth's surface 3 weeks before the attack. Lush green, cityscapes pulsing with life, oceans glinting beneath satellite shadows. On the other, smoldering devastation. Infrared signatures of collapsing hospitals. Civilians vaporized mid-evacuation. The screams of children muted only by the clips cut off. He didn't raise his voice. That was not a misunderstanding. That was deliberate. Calculated. Executed with precision, using council-protected war tech. Delegates shifted. Several tried to avoid the images. A few watched closely, not for spectacle, but for confirmation of their fears. The Sovereigns sat immobile, their primary diplomat blinking slowly, calculating damage control. The human's voice never rose. We traced the energy signatures. Your cloak methods failed to hide every detail. We recovered allo fragments, deciphered transponder ghost codes, and decrypted tactical cross commands routed through relay buoys marked as civilian assets. Do not insult this chamber with claims of rogue factions. He rotated the feed. It displayed a star chart, highlighting warp trail paths from Sovereign's claimed sectors. Then layered tactical deployment patterns matching the strike locations. The precision dismantled deniability. Earth's people buried 3 million within the first week. Not soldiers. Civilians. Scientists. Infants. You struck hospitals, data archives, and shelters marked neutral under council law. A low vibration passed through the chamber. It wasn't sound, but an empathic shift from the Kaith, a telepathic race whose ambassador emitted emotional cues during extreme stress. She was absorbing fragments of what the delegate carried, and her nervous system trembled. The human didn't pause for sympathy. We didn't retaliate because noise is cheap. Fury is expected. We are not here to perform grief for an audience. He paused. Not to gather composure, but to be understood. We watched your response. Most of you chose silence. A few of you sent automated condolences. Some called it an unfortunate strategic mishap. None offered restitution. None demanded answers. The hologram changed again. A list. Not names, but symbols. Crest of every species seated in the chamber. Marked in red were those who had voted against investigating the incident. Marked in gray were those who abstained. Only 3 showed green. He looked at the marks as he spoke. Noted. That word, short and hollow, felt heavier than any declaration. You assumed Earth would crawl to this chamber pleading for unity. You believed we would beg for protection. You mistook silence for submission. He leaned forward slightly, not threatening, but precise. We don't seek vengeance. We seek memory. And consequence. You may continue your debates. You may call for restraint. But understand this clearly, Earth does not forget. And Earth does not pause. Delegates began exchanging nervous signals. Some activated discrete data links beneath their desks. Others whispered across species lines for the first time in decades. This wasn't just a wounded nation seeking recognition. This was a predator walking into the room without baring teeth, because it didn't need to. The human finally broke gaze and deactivated the projection. The room dimmed, but the silence deepened. He stepped back from the pedestal. I speak not as a victim. Not as a diplomat. I stand here because the one thing you failed to consider is that we did not come to ask. He gave no final plea. No demand. He turned and walked toward the exit. No hesitation. No backward glance. And in that silence left behind, the chamber felt something it hadn't known in centuries. Not authority. Not order. But the realization that they had been measured. And found wanting. The chamber remained suspended in a strange stillness. Delegates sat frozen, their postures rigid, thoughts scattered behind unreadable faces. The echoes of the humans' words lingered, not just in sound, but in the weight they carried. It wasn't a speech. It was a judgment. A slow rotation began on the central platform. The projection returned, this time unprompted. Earth again. But not cities. Not war footage. A single house appeared, old, modest, surrounded by trees. Then another. A street. A market. Human faces smiling in still frames, unaware their moments were now relics. No explanation followed. The simplicity struck deeper than data ever could. Then came the voice. Cold, steady, unmistakably human. The same delegate, now off-platform, but his words cut through distance like a blade. You attacked our home? It wasn't shouted. It didn't need emphasis. It landed with the gravity of finality. Not accusation, confirmation. For a full 6 seconds, the chamber was devoid of reaction. Not even breath stirred. Entire species with entirely different nervous systems responded the same way, with silence. Something in those 4 words stripped away the protective layers of protocol and politics. Not because they were unexpected, but because they were irrefutable. The Sovrex delegation remained still, eyes unblinking, as though hoping stillness could deflect consequence. The Yulari, a species with symbiotic memory sharing, began softly pulsing in regret, sharing sorrow through light patterns that echoed across their section. The Jern, analytical by nature, began recalculating projection models. Not of defense. Of survival. The words didn't imply threat. They rendered everything that followed irrelevant. The question was no longer whether the attack had occurred. It was now what the price would be. A delegate from the Vike Confederacy, known for neutrality, broke protocol. Are we to consider this a declaration of war? The human didn't stop walking. His reply was precise. You declared it. We're just acknowledging the terms. Another delegate asked. Does Earth demand reparations? The response came instantly. We demand nothing. Demand suggests mercy is an option. The tension shifted into something else, unease no longer masked by protocol. They understood what was being said. Earth would not be appeased. It would not be negotiated into forgetting. There would be no bargain. The projections on the chamber dome began to cycle again. This time, encrypted visuals from outside council-sanctioned zones. Shipyards once dormant now glowing with activity. Transmissions intercepted in deep void sectors. Human craft, larger, colder, faster than before, operating without registry. Council observers began piecing together data they had overlooked or dismissed. Movement patterns. Disappearances along border colonies. Unclaimed strikes on pirate syndicates. The clues had been there. Earth hadn't waited. It had already started moving. A deep hum stirred from the square seat. One of their kin emitted a phrase in their ultrasonic tone, translated as, "We underestimated the timeline." Indeed they had. The final projection showed Earth's orbital grid. What was once a peaceful array of communications satellites and scientific platforms had transformed. Dense clusters now layered the low orbit band, each glowing with anti-kinetic shielding, some with unknown signatures. A net. Defensive. Impossibly fast in construction. A voice, possibly from the human delegation or an AI transmission layered into the data stream, broke the final silence. We are not what we were before the strike. Every protocol you exploited has been rewritten. Every gap you mapped has been closed. Every silence you interpreted as weakness was preparation. We do not react. We respond. This wasn't performance. This wasn't anger trying to find audience. It was truth laid bare with mechanical clarity. Humanity had not lashed out, because it had chosen the one path that terrified the Council most: calculated evolution under duress. The delegates understood now that the council chamber was no longer a place of dominance. It had become a gallery. One in which they were no longer observers, but subjects of scrutiny. When the lights dimmed and the projection faded, the chamber was left hollow. No arguments followed. No debates erupted. Even the most war-hardened species refrained from posturing. They had heard the verdict. Not just from the humans' lips, but in the undeniable facts presented without embellishment. Earth would not wait for permission. Earth had adapted without approval. The silence held. And in that silence, the weight of consequence settled in. The human didn't return to the platform. He had said everything that mattered. His presence lingered like a pressure that refused to lift. Delegates remained seated, some locked in stillness, others exchanging glances that carried no comfort. There was no confusion now, only comprehension of what had been set in motion. A final transmission pulsed through the chamber network. Silent at first, then decoded in real time. It was not a demand, not a warning, but a formal declaration entered into Council record without request for consensus. Earth recognizes the Council's inability to enforce accountability. Therefore, we will proceed independently to secure justice. That was it. No signature. No insignia. Just a line that split the Council's illusion of order in two. Simultaneously, across the outer sectors, cloaked human vessels deactivated their stealth protocols. Dozens of them. Heavy class. Unmarked, silent, already embedded near border systems. They hadn't come to posture, they had been there, waiting. Watching. Ready. Fleet logs from nearby outposts began to flood the Council's channels. Human ships intercepting smugglers, dismantling illegal outposts, raiding private armories quietly supported by Sovereign-backed channels. All without firing a single shot. No threats issued. No casualties reported. Targets neutralized, equipment seized, data copied and transmitted directly to the Council's archive. Each action cold, methodical, efficient. Earth wasn't reacting emotionally. It had turned precision into doctrine. More data arrived. Drone footage of installations long thought undetectable. Underground vaults exposed. Covert communications intercepted and decoded. A dossier of names across several species, individuals who had authorized or benefited from the assault, now marked. Their faces glared from the Council displays, accompanied by records of their financial transfers, directives, and private correspondences. The implication was unmistakable. Humanity hadn't come to debate guilt. It had already proven it. And justice, as Earth now defined it, wasn't negotiable. The chair, for the first time in its long tenure, offered no commentary. It dimmed its form slightly, acknowledging in silence what could not be refuted. The Council's authority had been compromised, not through force, but irrelevance. Earth's delegate paused at the exit, turning just enough to be seen. Not dramatic. Intentional. No declarations. No demands. But understand this, those responsible will be found. Whether by your systems or by ours makes no difference anymore. With that, he departed. No procession. No final look back. The doors sealed behind him, and for a moment, the chamber felt hollow. Discussion didn't resume. No motions were submitted. No objections filed. What could be said? They had seen the truth and knew the cost of pretending otherwise. Several delegates deactivated their feeds and quietly stepped away. Others remained, staring at nothing. The Council, once the epicenter of control, now found itself reduced to observation. Earth no longer required permission to act. Outside the chamber, the reach of human influence expanded with calm precision. Trade routes rerouted through secured corridors enforced by unmanned drones. Human AI began issuing stability algorithms to neighboring systems destabilized by the attack's aftermath. Assistance was offered, but without strings. Earth wasn't trying to win favor. It was restoring order, its own way. Even those unaffiliated with the strike began recalculating. Old assumptions about human fragility, emotional volatility, diplomatic naivety collapsed. What remained was a model defined by control, not chaos. One by one, reports confirmed what many feared and a few admired. Earth had already positioned itself to move without resistance. Not because of superior firepower alone, but because they had prepared when others dismissed them. They had learned, adapted, and moved faster than the rest believed possible. The Sovereigns issued a private appeal for mediation. It was ignored. Within 72 hours, 3 senior Sovereigns officials were found on neutral planets, detained without conflict, extracted without notice. No casualties. No trace left behind but encrypted acknowledgments marked. Resolved. Those who had mocked Earth's lack of history in galactic affairs now faced a future dictated, in part, by its hand. The Council, once the guardian of interstellar stability, was left facing a reality it could neither rewrite nor ignore. Earth had not conquered anyone. It had simply refused to be conquered. And in doing so, it had redrawn the map, not with borders, but with consequence. In the cold records of that day, one phrase stood without embellishment. "You attacked our home?" And everything after became aftermath.